Only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Termone, Associate Executive Director of Alumni Engagement and Outreach at the University of Maryland Alumni Association. We appreciate your time today and hope that you will find other ways to engage with the university through the variety of programs we have for our alumni across the U.S. I am pleased to introduce Allison Carty, author of Career Grease, How to Get Unstuck and Pivot Your Career. She is a career coach who has guided hundreds of people to innovative and functional career solutions. She is a practical advocate for achieving your heart's desires, improving your work week, and making a difference, all while keeping an eye on your financial success. Allison's work has been featured on Monster, Forbes, and in the Washington Post. She is a certified coach and a graduate of the University of Maryland's Smith School of Business, class of 2006. Her career coaching website is www.cardy.careercoaching.com. We will be taking questions, so type any questions you may have in the questions box on your pop-up window. Allison will answer as many of these questions as there is time for at the end of the webinar. With that said, I will turn over the presentation to Allison. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim, for all the work that you're doing to support Maryland alums and also for your help organizing today's event. And thank you to all of you who came out for this webinar today. Before we get started and dig into the material, I would just invite you to come into this call with me. And by that, I mean, I know things have happened already this morning, and you probably have still things to do this afternoon and this evening. But just as best you can, I'd invite you to come in, focus for this next hour on this really important topic of your career. You can close all your other tabs and things and just make sure you have something where you can take some notes, and I'll be asking you some questions along the way. So you'll want to have something to write down your answers with. Today's talk is for you if you've been feeling dissatisfied with your career and you've been considering making a change, but you're not quite sure how to go about it. You are stuck at a career crossroads. Maybe you feel completely directionless and you're not sure what would be a better fit for you, and that lack of direction is making it hard to move forward. Or perhaps you have some glimmer of what might be a better fitting career for you, but you're worried about whether what you're thinking about is possible or even realistic. Or maybe you have a pretty clear idea of what might be better for you, but the path from where you are now to where you want to be is foggy or overwhelming, and you're not really sure how to get started. We're going to talk today about practical steps that you can take so that you can move forward, get clarity, and improve your career. Here is the game plan. I'm going to go over a big picture metaphor about career change. I'll share my own career change story to illustrate how you get started when you're standing at that crossroads. We'll go over Mason's career change story to further break down the steps of making a career change. And since we only have so much time today, and this is a subject that I know a lot about, I promise to give you as much as I can to improve your confidence and understanding of career changes today. And then I'll also give you some follow-up resources at the end of the presentation to take this even further. And then lastly, I'll ask you a really powerful question, which if you can answer it, it's going to make everything about this process a whole lot easier. As Tim mentioned, you can type in your questions in your box. We'll answer those at the end. And I'll also note in any story that I tell other than my own, I've changed some details to protect confidentiality. Most of all, what I want to do today is offer you hope. When you are in the middle of an ill-fitting career, it can sometimes be really hard to see that there's a way out or even to know that that's possible. And I tell our clients all the time, making a career change is a solvable problem. You can definitely do it. Sure, it's going to take some effort and a bit of courage. Sometimes some coaching along the way can really help, but it can be done. So I just want you to know that wherever you are in your career, you can make it better. And when you put in the work and improve your career, not only do you feel more on track, but it's also a really big relief to not have that nagging concern of something's not working here. We spend a lot of time and energy on our careers, so it's really worth it to invest some of your energy to get it lined up with what you're most wanting. I'm going to share one of the best metaphors for career change that I know of, and it's actually based on a story that a client told me. But before I get to that, I want to ask you guys 2 quick questions, which you can jot down the answer for yourself. The first is, what feeling are you most craving from your career? So obviously something's not working, something's missing. If you could identify the feeling that you're not getting that you wish that you had, more fulfillment, more security, more pride, more engagement, what is missing? I'll be quiet for just a sec so you can answer that. And my next question is, if you had to take that feeling and represent it with a physical symbol, what physical symbol would represent the feeling that you're most wanting from your career? So for example, if you wanted to feel more engaged, maybe you could pick an object that's engaging to you. It doesn't have to be career related. Like for me, I might pick a soccer ball because that's fascinating to me to play soccer. So again, think of a symbol and jot that down. Okay, hopefully you have something. Now I'm going to take you into this career change metaphor. I want you to imagine that you are standing right outside an unfamiliar house at nighttime. So this house is somewhere that you've never been before, and you're not sure about where you are or how to maneuver within it. So what you do is you open up the door, and it's dark inside. Your eyes haven't adjusted to the darkness yet. You try the switches on the entryway wall. The electricity is out. And so you're just standing there at the front door of this house. Before you go all horror movie on me, it's not a creepy house. Just the lights are out. It's quiet. Nobody's home. But you feel okay, if a bit cautious. Now we're going to call where you're standing at the front door of this house your current career. In this metaphor, I'm going to magically appear beside you like a fairy godmother, and I hand you a flashlight. And I give you this one instruction. That thing that you're most wanting from your career is waiting for you out on the back porch of this house. So that soccer ball, fill in the blank with whatever object you came up with, it's waiting for you right outside. All you have to do is walk through the house, out the back door, to get to the porch and get to this thing that you're wanting. You perk up a bit at that because you really want this thing, and it doesn't seem too hard to maneuver through the house. So do you think that you can make it through an unfamiliar house from the front door with a flashlight all the way to the back door? Probably. You might jump at some shadows along the way, but yeah, you could probably do it. Now what if instead of a flashlight, we were at the front door of that house and I gave you a blindfold and I put it on you? Now the situation is going to start to feel a bit scarier. You're going to become more cautious because you can't see anything. And you might be tempted to just stay at the front door to avoid bumping into anything and injuring yourself. You might just stand there hoping that the lights are going to come on sometime and the blindfold will be removed. Walking through an unfamiliar house to get to the back door and out onto the porch is a lot like making a career change. And just like in this metaphor, when we talk about making a career change, we're generally operating in the flashlight to blindfold spectrum of visibility. So we're not talking about a well-lit movie theater with lights on the ground showing you exactly where to go. A flashlight level visibility means we may only see the next step in front of us, not the end destination and not the whole journey along the way. And a blindfold level of visibility means our vision of possibility might be blocked, which makes the whole process just seem a whole lot harder and scarier than it really is. Let me give you two big picture examples of what a blindfold around standing at that front door trying to figure out your career direction might look like in real life. The first blindfold is basically based on how we view the world. We get stuck because we look out at the world and we're limited by what we see. When I'm in front of an audience, like a visible audience, I ask them for some common professions. And normally they'll throw out ideas to me like doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant. And what I think is so interesting about how they respond is that back in the day, I worked as a babysitter. And at one point, I was picking up this kid from elementary school. And I went in the elementary school hallway. And the kids had done this project where they had to fill in the blank, when I grow up, I want to be. And they had to fill in the blank and also draw a little picture of what they wanted to be. And wouldn't you know that the elementary school kids had listed some of the same professions. They had put doctor, teacher, professional athlete was really highly represented in what these kids wanted to be. And if you think about it, the way a kid might understand professions is going to be basically who they've interacted with. So they've been to the doctor, they know that exists. They've been, they go to school, they see their teacher, they know that's a profession. They might watch sports and assume that that's what all adults do, and that looks like a lot of fun. But if you think about it, the way kids understand the whole sphere of professions that are out there are kind of like the way a kid would understand all the different animals that exist in the world. Like we teach kids farm animals, goat, pig, cat, dog, cow, horse. But in reality, there are so many more animals and wildlife out in the world than we really teach kids. And I think a lot of us, when we look at professions, we're looking out at the world with kind of this limited understanding of really what's out there and how many possibilities actually exist. I've worked with so many clients, hundreds of people at this point in time, and they have come from many, many different industries. There are different jobs in every industry. I've also spoken to a ton of professional organizations, more than I bet you guys could name, just off the top of your head. So I want you to know that there are many more possibilities and job opportunities in the world than you might be realizing. This lack of vision, lack of understanding what's out there can show up in a lot of different ways. I just have one quick story. We had a client, Mark, who came to us thinking that he wanted to open up a bike shop because biking was a hobby of his. He enjoyed it. He was familiar with it. But he just thought and dreamt about it, and he never really moved towards it. Now, popular culture often emphasizes, go for the dream. But as we started working with Mark, we learned that his dream actually had some flaws. As we got to know him, we learned that he hated direct sales, he enjoyed working in quiet spaces alone, and he really preferred complex, creative problem solving, not maintenance-oriented tasks. So if you match up those preferences with being a bike shop owner, you can see that he might not have been, that might not have been a good fit for him in day-to-day life. So we dug into the underlying desire behind why was he thinking he wanted to open a bike shop. And as we talked to him more, we found out that he really, really wanted flexibility. He wanted flexible working hours, control over his schedule. And he had an assumption, probably false, that owning a bike shop would give that to him. So through our work with Mark, we helped him to see new opportunities that hadn't ever crossed his mind before that would give him that underlying desire of flexibility and also be a lot better fit for who he was. And once he latched onto an idea that actually met who he was and what he most wanted, flexibility, then he was able to move forward. But the underlying problem he was having was that he wasn't aware of other possibilities for flexible work before, so he was just latching on to this one thing that he knew about, but it wasn't quite right. So the first blindfold is that we don't see all the opportunities in the workforce that are available to us. We see our own little cubicle, our own little corner of the world. Maybe we know what our family and friends do, but that's about it. And that can keep us stuck and not seeing what else is out there. The second blindfold that comes up is we're blind to our own capability. This is a really subtle point, but super important. Let me break it down to you, or break it down for you. Generally, when something is not working in our career, it's going to affect our confidence, our energy, our enthusiasm, and our sense of ourself. So if you're working weekends and like driving yourself to burnout, if you're totally bored and you haven't been challenged for quite a long time, if you have a crazy manager who is sending you mixed messages about how you're doing in the workforce, maybe you're not making a great paycheck, any of those things that are driving you to want to make a change are also going to impact your perception of yourself. They're probably going to diminish your perception of yourself. We had this client, Delilah, who I actually write a lot more about in my book, who had a couple things in her career that weren't great, but probably the worst of which was that she had overheard a comment about herself in the hallway. Some other coworkers were talking about her that was really negative. And she took that comment like a knife to her heart. It made her feel inadequate, down on herself, filled with doubt. And when she felt that way, she didn't want to do anything to try to improve her career, particularly if it meant putting herself out there into a job search where she might face more criticism or more rejection. So I really want you guys to be aware of this. The same thing that's driving you to want to make a change may also be impacting your perception of yourself or your energy to make that change. And it's not that you are lacking, it's that your assessment of yourself may be off kilter. This doesn't apply to everybody, but for a lot of people, it really does happen. We're human. When we are in an environment that's not working very well, it's going to affect us. It happens, and it's also addressable. With our client Delilah, we thoughtfully worked through what she'd heard. We took what could be constructive and left the rest behind. We also reconnected her to her confidence. She was actually a top school graduate, a collegiate athlete, a really great person. And when we cleaned things up and lifted her back up, connected her to who she really was, then forward movement became a lot easier. I'll note that obviously I can't see all you guys, I don't know you, but in general, people who are attracted to my work are smart, capable, responsible, good-hearted people. And in all likelihood, you are a smart, capable, responsible, good-hearted person. And I think sometimes we all just need a little reminder of that. It can be easy to kind of get stuck in a funk about ourselves. So this second idea, the second blindfold, is basically we're blind to our own capability. We're not seeing everything that we can really do. And if you're standing at the front door, in this metaphor that I shared, wearing one or both of these blindfolds of not really seeing what else is out there, not really seeing what you're capable of, and you're trying to figure out what to do next, you're going to have some trouble. Because not only is the house dark and it's an unfamiliar journey, but we also have these blindfolds on that are making it really hard to see. So how do you get to that better career, that back porch, when you can't totally see where you're going, particularly when the stakes are higher, when your decisions affect your livelihood, your future, potentially other people in your life? I'll tell you what a lot of smart people do. And I have a story to share with you later. I did this too. They stand at the front door, otherwise known as your current career, and they try to map out everything in their heads. They think about their career a lot. Now this is really problematic because when you can't see and you don't have a clear sense of the landscape, you don't know all the twists and turns, you're working with limited knowledge and it's going to be hard to make a successful plan. Career changes are actually something that needs to be solved with new real-world information and with movement. If you think about that metaphor, really the only way to get out to the back porch, to that thing that you're wanting, is to actually move towards it, not just to think about it. So maybe you move with a flashlight level sense of it, taking things one step at a time. Maybe you have the blindfold on, but you can still fumble your way forward, feeling along the wall. But you must explore. I'm going to share in the upcoming stories what types of movement are most effective. And know that anytime you're taking movement, it doesn't have to be a huge leap. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. You can explore within the safety net of retaining your current job. But every time you take a step forward, you're going to get closer to that career path that you're looking for. As I mentioned earlier, a client actually told me this metaphor in the context of working together. He told it as a story that when he was a kid, his grandmother took him in her house, turned off all the lights, handed him a flashlight, and told him to do this, to teach him the lesson that you can get somewhere even if you can't see it, if you actively and courageously engage with what you can see, with what's right in front of you. When you actually move, you get unstuck, you get new information, and you get on your way. Certainly, it can take some work, it can take some courage, but you can get to that better place in your career. Now, you might be thinking, Allison, in this little metaphor, you at least had a direction of the back door. But I have no clue what I want for my career. I feel totally lost. Well, let me break that down for you next. I'm going to share the story of my own career change to illustrate what the first steps of a career change look like. So even though I've worked as a career coach now for over 7 years, and I've helped hundreds of people figure out their career directions, and I'm all happy and smiley in this photo, there was a time when I was clueless about what to do with my life and career. My very first client was myself, and back in the day, I did not know what I was doing. I grew up in a really particular pocket of the world where I was a bit of a black sheep. There are two professions that are very heavily represented in my family, engineering and accounting. My dad is an electrical engineer with an accounting degree. My older brother is an electrical engineer. My mom is an accountant, and my sister-in-law is an accountant. Not only that, I attended math, science, and computer science middle and high school programs. So I was around these smart, dedicated people who I really enjoyed. However, while my classmates were out programming in their spare time, in my spare time, I would watch Oprah, and I would read a ton of self-help materials. I loved to journal and try to figure out how to improve my life. But I never talked to anybody about those things. I just kind of did them. I think like a lot of people, I didn't put too much thought into my career when I was in high school. I didn't really have a plan for college, but my parents had a plan, as parents often do. My mom had actually gone through a career change from teaching to accounting, and it was a wonderful change for her. And I think my parents wanted to save me, kind of ironically, from having to make a career change. So they said, well, why don't you just start in accounting? It's a good paying field. There's lots of job prospects. Your mom likes it. Whatever could go wrong? So that's what I did. I got a degree in accounting. I worked as an accountant. I started dating my now husband, who, of course, has an engineering degree. And I was really miserable in those early accounting jobs. I could do them, but I didn't really like the work. And I always like to put an asterisk here and say that while I didn't like accounting, it is a wonderful field that can be a great fit for folks. But for me, like I said, I had watched a lot of Oprah. And Oprah said, find your passion, follow your passion. And I knew that I was not passionate about accounting. In fact, I actively disliked it. At the time, I was working as a government auditor So I saw a lot of basements. I took samples of financial statements. I was really bored. I clicked all the clickbait. Like I was really up on my celebrity gossip at that point in my life. And I remember at one point my husband sent me a little picture of a frog hanging from a tree branch. This is my frog representation. I couldn't find the photo. And the frog, the caption said, "Hang in there." And it was right on point because I was struggling. I was so worried that this dull life was going to be my entire future, and through the melodramatic lens of a recent grad, that seemed too terrible to contemplate. So there I was, just like that metaphor I told, standing at the front door in a particular career path, wanting something different and so utterly clueless about how to go about it. Not to mention, there was a fair amount of pressure from my family to stay put where I was. I tried to figure things out on my own. I researched on the internet. I looked into graduate school. I looked at jobs. I thought about my career a lot. I tried to map things out. I was cleaning out my closet a couple years ago now, and I found just notebooks of churn, printouts, and notes that I never did anything with. And this went on for like 2 years. And I'll note in my professional experience, it really isn't uncommon for people to stay in that crossroads place for a year or more. I've seen people up to a decade or longer just feeling stuck. Now, at that point in my life, I didn't ask anybody for help because I was so scared that they were going to try to talk me out of what I really wanted. My family had such a strong agenda for me. I didn't know that it was possible that you could talk to people who could help you from an agenda-less place, which is actually what my team and I now create for people. I often tell our clients, we care about you, but we don't care what you do. We're not selling one solution as the answer. We just want to help you to get what you most want. Well, after a lot of angst and frustration, I made an important switch in my strategy that changed my future. I switched from thinking about my career to actually taking real-world actions to help me get more information. I had a hunch that I liked people stuff and writing. How those things would translate into a career, absolutely no clue. I was at that front door with the lights out. But I decided to use those interests as a general direction, and I began moving towards them with baby steps. I think a lot of people get tripped up here because we want to know the specific destination right at the start. But all you need to get started is a general direction and a willingness to put yourself in new situations. Movement is really clarifying. Even if you bump into a wall, you go down a road that's not going to work, that at least gives you the opportunity to learn that the wall is there or that that path isn't going to be the right fit for you. As a quick aside, there's one other thing that is really helpful around the whole idea of career change that I totally missed when I was working through my own process, but it's really clear to me now. And that is just the idea that if you focus on the indirect action of building and maintaining your network, you try to surround yourself with people who are supportive and helpful, and you try to help them as you can. It's not going to directly help you figure out your career, but having that support around you really makes a difference. I think there's a myth out there that we should be able to do everything ourselves, but in reality, nobody makes it alone. And it's really important to take some time to pay attention to feeding your network. I know you've all heard that before, but let me just hit that one more time for you guys. I know for me it was something I really had to consciously prioritize because life gets busy. We have work, social lives, going to the gym, watching an entire season of House of Cards in one weekend, and it's really easy to neglect this simple idea of building and feeding our relationships. Okay, so back to figuring out your general career direction. What I want you guys to do is answer this question. What general hunches do you have about your desired career direction? They do not need to be perfect. They do not need to point to a specific job. Just what big picture hunches do you have about what you're wanting? Try to jot down 1 to 3 ideas, and I'll be quiet for just a moment while you guys do that. Okay, hopefully you have something, or else you just wrote down the question and you can take this after the webinar to take a little more time with it. At one point, I was talking to this lovely woman who said to me, I know I like problem solving and I don't like working with people. And the way she said it, she was like throwing up her hands, like these were totally useless pieces of knowledge. And they are general statements. They don't point to one specific job. But if you think about the whole universe of jobs, they do actually narrow things down quite a bit. Something that's really customer-facing or team-oriented probably wouldn't be a good fit for somebody who doesn't like working with people. And someone who loves problem-solving, maybe a more technically oriented job would be a good fit. Now, after this, I'm going to go over a case study, and I'll explain how you can take this general knowledge and move it to a more specific job. But for now, a general direction is fine. And you actually can get started with taking exploratory action steps just with a general direction. In my own case, with my I like people and writing direction, I started doing 3 different things to kind of test the waters. I started volunteering at a crisis and suicide hotline as a listener, which sounds dark and depressing, but I really liked helping people, so I thought it could be a good idea. I did some after-school mentoring with kids, and I started participating in a writing group. Now, beginning those things didn't immediately change my life, but they did give me new experiences. In particular, the experience that really stuck for me was the hotline. I received an amazing training. I learned I had a knack for helping work, which I didn't know before. I had never done it before. I was selected to become a trainer of other volunteers, and that meant a lot to me. Overall, I just found the experience really rewarding to help people, to listen, to create that safe, clean space for folks. I also noticed that I fit in with the other people around me, the other volunteers and trainers. I felt a commonality with them in a way that I hadn't felt in business, school, or in my high school. And all these things helped boost my confidence that this was probably a good path for me. Now, I didn't know where those first real-world steps would lead when I took them, but that experience at the hotline, that movement, was really the catalyst that led me to coach training and the many, many, many steps I've taken since then to get on the path that I'm on now, where I now specialize in this process of career change. I lead a team of coaches to do this work, and I have a total 180 on my daily outlook and sense of the future. I actually like my work. I wake up enthusiastic and ready to get started. Of course, some days there's stress and long to-do lists, and everyone in general has good days and bad days. But I do feel a lot more challenged, engaged, and fulfilled in what I'm doing. I love the people in my world, both my team and my clients, and it's really night and day from where I started as an accountant. And I feel a lot of gratitude to my past self for her courage and willingness to fumble her way forward, taking step after step to get me here. It took our first client, me, literally years to figure out my career. Now, with our clients, we get their career direction sorted out in 1 month for clean, straightforward cases to 3 months for cases where there's more work to do to remove some blocks. My case would have been a 3-month case because of the family pressure and some judgments I'd inherited about working in a helping profession that just would need to be addressed before I could move forward quickly. And that's not to say we get folks perfectly settled into a new career path in a month or 3 months. Obviously, things take time in the real world. but we are very successful at clarifying our clients' career direction, getting them headed that way, removing stumbling blocks, and eliminating that standing at the front door, feeling totally lost and unsure how to get started phenomenon. So how do you go from, okay, I have this broad, vague direction, to translating it into something more concrete? Let me share Mason's story to help break it down. Now, I'll note I picked this particular story because it really illustrates the big picture framework of why career changes happen, not because it's representative of every client that we've ever worked with. We work with amazing people all over the world in different stages of life, from every industry imaginable, from a VP level tech professional to a defense contractor to someone doing marketing for associations to a mom reentering the workforce. So if the details of this particular case don't resonate with you, just listen for the underlying ideas. And again, I have a quick question to start us off. Why do you think people make career changes? What do you think drives people to do it? Again, when I'm in front of a visible audience, they'll call out things like boredom, burnout, they want to find their passion. And these are all true, but I want to give you a clearer framework for what drives career change. When I started working as a career coach, I thought I would be helping people to find their passion. I'd left one field to get more fulfillment, and I thought that was what everybody needed. And then I met Mason, who totally broke my mold. Mason was a 30-something man living in London, working as an actor. He was very charismatic, full to the brim of passion. When we first start working with clients, we have them answer a set of about 15 open-ended questions just to figure out a bit more about their strengths, their interests, their dreams. And Mason's answers to these questions pointed in a really clear direction. He knew what he loved. He loved acting. He'd been doing it for a long time. And he found the whole process very engaging. The creativity, the expression, the attention, loved it all. And if you looked at Mason from the outside, from the Facebook posts and how he was presenting himself, it would look like he was killing it. He was doing something that he loved. There were red carpet photos and exciting announcements. So why was he coming to me, a career coach? It was because beneath all the outward presentation, Mason was not making any money. In fact, he was still relying on his parents to support him. And as you can imagine, when you're in your early 30s, still relying on your parents for money, it's going to come with some ramifications. There are a bunch of boundary issues and expectations from his parents that went along with that financial support. Mason felt powerless and frustrated in the midst of this situation. He had invested so much in his acting career that in a way he was trapped by it. He clearly had a problem on the financial end of things, but he didn't know how to address it. So let's look again at why career changes happen with Mason's situation in mind. I want you to consider that our careers affect three big areas of our lives: our fulfillment, our financial health, and our personal time/well-being. We start thinking about a career change when what we are getting from our career in these three areas does not match up with what we are most wanting in these three areas. So in Mason's case, what he really wanted at that point in his life was financial health and financial independence. And what his career was giving him was a whole lot of fulfillment, not a lot of financial benefit, and it was a mixed bag for how it was impacting his health. Physically, he was very healthy. Emotionally, he was having a bit of trouble with the whole parent thing. If you think back to my story, I was the exact opposite. My career provided for me, when I worked in accounting, with financial health. I made a decent salary. I had some personal time. I was working for the government, so I was done at 5:30 on the dot every single day. But what I most wanted at that point in my life was fulfillment. This big picture lack of alignment is what drives career change. Now, I want to be clear here. What we want from our careers is very personal. It's shaped by our values, our history, and our experiences. So my team's perspective is that there's not one right thing to want. We always just want to listen to what the person in front of us is most wanting and then help them to figure out how to get it. Now you might be looking at this Venn diagram and seeing that there's a little spot in the middle where all of these things overlap. And you might be thinking, well, Allison, what I most want is to be happy, wealthy, and healthy. And I would say, of course, that is what we all want. However, in the real world, there's a bit of a career seesaw out in the marketplace. On one end of the seesaw is financial compensation, and on the other end of the seesaw is level of fulfillment and personal time and well-being. In general, these two things move in opposition to one another. So for jobs that make you take a hit on the personal time and well-being or the fulfillment, so jobs that maybe are high stress, long hours, require a lot of continuing education, maybe there's more risk involved, more responsibility involved, we compensate for those kind of negative factors with financial compensation. And on the flip side, when jobs have a lot of intrinsic value, you might really enjoy doing them, you might have a lot of a clear end time, clear-cut, shorter-term work, there's less of a need to compensate financially for those things. So as I said, they generally move in opposition to one another. That's not to say that there aren't low-paying jobs that are terrible or high-paying jobs that are great. Of course, there are, but generally this happens. If you just think about emergency room nurses as an example who work the night shift, nobody really wants to work the night shift, but we need people in those roles, so we pay time and a half. We compensate to get people to fill them. So what I want you to do is take a look at your specific situation. And I want you to consider, with your current job or career path, if you could rank 1 to 3, with 1 being what you're most getting, what are you currently most getting from your career path? And then what are you most wanting in the desired job column? What's in the lead for you? If you had to pick, if you had to put something at the top and order these things, what are you really wanting? Again, I'll be quiet for just a moment so you can fill that out, and then we'll continue on. Okay, hopefully you've taken a stab at it. And I do want to reiterate, it is really okay to want whatever you want. If you want a simpler life, a busier life, more fulfillment, more financial health, more time with your family, whatever you want is okay, and I think it's really worth it to try to get what you want. I'll also note that what you want might change over time, so you'll just need to course correct when that happens. With this framework, it can be really clarifying to see where you are and what is driving you to be wanting to make a change. And if when you filled out this little table, you saw that what you have matches up with what you want at a big picture level, then that's good to know too. Maybe it's an environmental issue like office politics or a commute, not the actual career path that's driving your dissatisfaction. So let me finish up Mason's story. When a client works with us, the first session is a 90-minute deep dive where we ask them a ton of questions. It's sort of like taking an out-of-focus telescope and putting it into focus, figuring out what this person wants. And in Mason's case, during that session, I was also trying to figure out what was causing him to have such an issue about being trapped as an actor. If he wanted to make more money, and that was clearly so important to him, why didn't he just go get a job and make some more money? Well, it turned out Mason had a belief that he was either going to work as an actor 100% or he was going to entirely throw away his dream. So he was seeing it as like black and white. Either I'm going to be a star or I'm not going to do anything with it at all. So that way of thinking about things was making him cling to acting and block out all other possible sources of income. For him to get what he wanted, which was more financial health, we really had to question this. Was it true? Do you have to be all or nothing? Would it be possible to earn a supplemental income and still pursue acting? Mason and I worked through a really systematic process that helps to question this type of mental thinking or block. It's really gentle, and it gives your brain a chance to catch up with things and figure it out yourself versus being told, which can be really hard to hear. So we worked through this process, and Mason caught on that maybe it wasn't such a black and white thing. I remember him saying to me, people have been telling me forever that I should just go get a job, but this is the first time I could actually hear it. And when he saw that a job could be a support of acting, then he was able to move forward and see more possibilities. From this place of being mentally ready, I then guided Mason through career exploration, which is the next step to take after you have a general direction. You want to try to identify jobs that are a good fit for what your general direction is. And the way I like to do this, the way I had Mason do it, is you take your general direction and you go to a database of jobs. The one that I like is called insidejobs.com. And you just poke around and try to notice which jobs make you lean forward in your chair, which ones are kind of have a little charge for you. Mason did this. Long story short, he poked around, we talked through the jobs that he found, and we identified a lead hypothesis of working in sales. So from there, once you have a specific job, and it doesn't have to be right, it's just a hypothesis, you're then going to go deeper into exploring that job. With Mason, we looked for test experiences, which are low-risk, low-commitment ways to test your hypothesis in the real world. You're going to want to do anything that moves you away from a computer screen. So maybe that's talking to somebody who's in that job, going to industry events, volunteering for that type of work. Anything that puts you closer to a real-world experience of the job so that you can check your hypothesis. Am I on the right track or not? Mason felt like he was on a good track, and he moved on to job searching, and he eventually landed a flexible gig so that he could still have time for auditions as a salesperson for a local plumbing company. And there was a little twist in his case. The head of the company had actually been looking into running television ads, and when he learned that Mason was an actor, he cast Mason in the ads. So Mason continued pursuing his acting career on the side as well, and he was also finally building his nest egg, which was what he'd come to us in the first place for. Now, I went quickly there, so I just want to recap the really specific steps that you want to take to figure out your career. First, you want to be willing to take action in the real world versus just thinking about things. You need to identify a general direction that you're interested in and your priorities. You want to match up that direction to potential jobs, make a hypothesis, explore that hypothesis with test experiences, and then repeat that until you latch on to a path that feels good to you, at which point you'll move to job searching. So in conclusion, career changes can make a really big difference about how you feel about yourself, how you feel getting out of bed, coming home at night. We're really talking about choosing a better fitting identity, which is a big deal. We're almost through with today's material. I just want to very quickly offer you some follow-up resources to go deeper with this. Then I'll ask you one powerful question, and then we'll take questions from you guys. The first resource is for you motivated do-it-yourselfers. It's totally free. It's a weekly e-course where you get a reminder of some step to take to improve your career. You can get that at cardicareercoaching.com/ecourse. I'll put this up at the end as well if you didn't get to copy it down. The next is my book, Career Grease, How to Get Unstuck and Pivot Your Career. I really talked about the big picture process of career change today, but my book goes into all the twists and turns and the details. There are more case studies and exercises and tips. It's available on Amazon. And then lastly, for those of you who want some hands-on, caring, personalized coaching, this is my team, Julia, Sarah, and Deborah, and we provide 3 best-in-class career coaching programs. We help people to dramatically increase their clarity about what they want from their career and how to go about getting it. After working with us, you'll feel more confident in where you're going with your career, and we'll help you to make a career plan that is custom-built for your life to help you to move forward with greater ease. And we'll get you all those things a lot faster than you get them on your own, because this is our specialty and we know the road really well. It's sort of like if you were standing with a blindfold on, but you're holding the hand of someone who can see, it just makes things easier. So you can go to cardicareercoaching.com/coaching to get started with that. All right, so I know I just threw out a ton of URLs, but if you could just give me attention for one more minute, because I have that powerful question for you. Are you ready? What is the very next step in front of you to take in terms of moving your career forward? Is it looking at that database of jobs? Is it talking to someone? Is it asking for help? Take a moment and write down what just the next step is. Even if you don't know the whole road, what is the step that you see? I know that we covered a lot today, and you're not going to retain everything, but please take that step and put it on your calendar. Make it a priority. It's not going to accidentally happen. It's going to happen when you choose to make it happen. You guys have been a wonderful audience. If you take nothing else away from today, I hope I gave you some hope that there is a way out. There's always a way forward. It'll take some work, but definitely you can improve your career, and putting in that effort is so worth it. So with that, I hear Tim back on the line. Do you guys have any questions?
Allison, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I just want to remind everybody that's still on the line that we do have 20 of Allison's book, Career Grease, that we're going to be giving away for everybody that attended this live webinar. So when you see an email from me tomorrow in your inbox saying that you've won a book, please provide the information so that I can get it sent out to you as quickly as I possibly can. Those of you that were unfortunately not able to win a book, I hope that you go out and purchase Allison's book so that you can get unstuck and pivot your career. So we've had a few questions. I've encapsulated what I think is maybe like 2 or 3 main ones, and then it looks like a few more are coming in. We'll see how many we get through. So the first question came from a couple of people that basically said that they were in a funk. They know that they need to make a change, but they don't know why they want to make the change. They just feel they need it. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, let me think about it. So I guess the first thing that I'm curious about, and it's going to be really different for different cases, is the funk specific to your career, or is the funk more general? If it's specific to your career, then you probably want to get started on that avenue. If it's a more general malaise, then any improvement that you feel like you can get traction on, like even if it was health or organizing your home, you can get started there, and hopefully that will help to move things forward. Sometimes we all get into a bit of a funk, and the way that we're thinking about things kind of keeps us there. So another piece of advice is if you have somebody in your life who's kind of like a cheerleader or a supportive person, if you bring it to them, or a coach like myself, and say, hey, I keep thinking about this thing like this. Like I keep thinking I'm too old to make a change, or too this or too that. Talk it over with somebody else and help to get their brain involved so they can show you an avenue that you might not be seeing yet.
Awesome. A couple of people have asked, they really want to completely change the industry that they're in, and it looks like they've tried the networking route with little success. Is there another step that they should be taking first before they try and go out and network with others in the industry that they want to be in?
First of all, I'm so happy to hear that you're networking. A lot of people are stuck behind the computer, so good job on doing that. I think if you already know the place that you want to get to, just realize making a change can take some persistence. So it's not, I went to one networking event and it didn't work. It's really trying to find a way to consistently engage with people in that industry. You're actually doing the right thing by going to networking events. So I'd really encourage you to be persistent, stick with it, keep showing up, get your name known. You can also try following up with people one-on-one and saying, hey, I'm interested in going into this career. Can I conduct an informational interview with you? And just be really respectful, listen to them, send them a follow-up and say, hey, I took your advice. It was so good. So you can start doing one-on-one connections in addition to maybe just going to events. And also you can learn information like, is there some requirement that I'm not meeting that I need to have? Like, do I need a credential? Would it be helpful if I swapped my resume format in some way? To really ask people who are in that industry for some sense of if there's anything that you don't have that you could get to boost your credentialing. And then also, like I said, be persistent, really stick with it. I had one client who had a very specific organization that he wanted to work for, and he wound up reaching out for and getting informational interviews with almost everybody in that organization. And you can bet that they took notice and he got a job there. So really stick with it.
Great. This came in from a few people, and I hope I encapsulate this correctly, but it sounds like people maybe in the 50 to 55-year-old range that have been trained as or have been doing something for decades, and they've got 10 years or so left with their official career, I guess, and they just can't do it anymore. Where do they start, knowing that they're kind of in the twilight of their working career, but knowing they can't do the same thing they've been doing for the next decade or so?
Great question, and I think a lot of people hit that point where you're just tired of that one particular career path. So something that I want you to think about is we did that chart of what is your priority right now, and I'd really encourage you to think carefully. Is it I really want to hit a certain financial goal so that I can move on to a retirement career or whatever, or do I really just want to feel fulfilled right now? So really know your priority. And then from that place, you don't have to think about it as switch in one fell swoop. You can think about what is my short-term plan and what is my long-term plan, and hopefully that will help you to feel more in control. Like maybe say, okay, short-term, I'm going to work this job 1 more year, save as much as I can, and begin moving and exploring that next thing that I want to be doing and building my network, talking to people. And then you can have that long-term game plan of I want to make that switch. So try to break it down. It doesn't have to be such a huge thing. Try to find the short-term game plan that will keep you sane, and then the bigger long-term goals that you want to have.
Great. And I think we have time for one more question. And again, it's kind of encapsulating a few people's comments. It's like, how do I re-energize myself? It sounds like a few people may have been out of work for a while and feel like they've just kind of been sitting still. Others, it sounds like maybe they've been in the same position for longer than they had hoped for and haven't quite figured out how to kind of like make that first leap, I guess.
Great question. So it is tricky if you have been in a place where you're out of work and that will take, that will just take an emotional toll on you, or even you've been in a job that's boring and you're just stale and you haven't been challenged. That's the thing as well. So There are a couple of things that you can do. One is I'd really encourage you to look back over your history and try to remind yourself of challenges that you've met and overcome. So even if your short-term memory of what's been going on is like, oh, I'm just sitting on the couch, what have you accomplished? You have overcome challenges and solved problems in the past. So really remind yourself of those things just to get a confidence boost. Another thing that you can do is try to find something that will challenge you and just get you a bit of more reinvigorated. So maybe that's a volunteer experience, maybe that's helping out with your kids' school thing, something where you're going to have a challenge and you can succeed at it. That's going to help your mental state and carry over into whatever next career path you pick as well.
Great. I appreciate your insight, Allison. We got a lot of comments saying that it was a great webinar, so we really appreciate your time. That's all the questions we have for today. If you have any follow-up questions for Allison, she's provided you with some information on how to get a hold of her, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon. Thanks, and go Terps!